Matthias is here, your trusted advisor. Let's talk about data flows. So how could you create enterprise-grade ETL pipelines without writing a single line of code? Today I will show you how that works, because that is exactly the thing that Data Flow Gen2 in Microsoft Fabric deliver. So let's have a look at the end-to-end architecture first. The end-to-end architecture, well, starts with 150 plus different sources. So 150 plus sources. 150 plus sources, which is really, really great. Inside of that sources, you do have things like SQL Server, things like CloudDBs, things like files, CSV, Excel, you name it, SaaS apps, REST APIs, and so on. Out of that, you first, when you run the data flow, you first extract, which are the connectors. Then you transform. Transform means Power Query. When you know Power BI, you know Power Query. And then you stage. Stage is typically Lakehouse. Stage. And after you staged, you will copy that stuff. Copy. With fast copy to your destination, and the destination could be a lakehouse again. So let's think a little bit about that. You have a lakehouse as a destination, and I said, okay, you have staging lakehouse. So let's keep that in mind. Staging is something different. We will talk about that later. You could send the data to a warehouse, of course, and you could send it to a KQL database. So these are different targets after you have ETL'd all that stuff. Why this architecture? Because Power Query alone, the transformation language here, is not able to scale to terabytes. Adding the staging, this one, to the equation makes it possible to have Parquet files, to have speed, and still to use the power of Power Query. So this Lakehouse, the staging is Spark based, right? This is Spark, and Spark is fast. And you still can use your familiar Power Query interface, which I think is really, really great. You always tell, or everybody speaks about Data Flow Gen2. Did you ask yourself? I did. Why? What's the difference to version 1, and why shouldn't I use version 1? What's the difference? So in a nutshell, it is Gen2 mashup engine processes everything in memory. Fine for megabytes, it's hard to gigabytes, even harder for terabytes. Gen2 brings you staging on disk and makes all the heavy lifting with Spark, which is a major improvement. Same user interface, but 100 times the scale. So let's have a look. When we draw it again, like Gen2 means you have your source, then you go to Power Query, then you go to your staging Lakehouse, and the staging Lakehouse sends the data to the Spark engine, and the Spark engine then uses this to send your data to Lakehouse, Warehouse, or KQL. So this is basically the thing that we just drawn a little bit more with the focus on Gen 2. Let's have a look how Gen 1 in comparison works. So this is Gen 1, right? Gen 1 has, of course, a source, then goes to the mashup engine. And from there, you have a single destination. A single destination could be Lakehouse, could be Warehouse, something like that. And you have the limited scale because this all happens in memory. So much simpler architecture. So bottom line is go always with G2, especially because you can configure whether you want to use staging or not. In general, you will use staging, but there can be downtimes, especially when you have not a huge amount of data. So let's have a look how this stuff works in, so to say, real life, and let's have a demo. So this is this is our Dataflow Gen2 that I will create here. You see, you still can create Dataflow Gen1, but there is no need to. You have to name it, as all Fabric items always the same. Because we will import Northwind data, I name it Northwind in this case. So we will load it, and this is the familiar Power Query interface. We will hit get data, and then because we will use an OData endpoint, we will select OData. Just paste our public available URL, so you can try it on yourself if you want to, and you will get all the data in the preview that is available on this OData endpoint. We will select customers and orders. I can click on that, so I will get a preview, which is quite helpful. So I have an idea which kind of data is available there. And once I hit create, I will see the data in my Power Query. It's then imported, and you see the query settings, the source and the navigation, everything is in there, as you are familiar with when you use Power BI. It's exactly the same. So data is here. We could name it, we could now transform it, we could arrange it, but it's that simple. In this case, it's again like in Power Query, it's a preview that we can use, and you see we have customer ID, company name, and so on. So let's play a little bit around with that data in the next step. So when we go to the next step, we could then run our demonstration. There we go. We have our data. So before we can really start with that, let's go to the settings and change the column profile, which means that I will get a histogram on top and some additional statistical data, so I have an idea which kind of data I have in my environment. I think that's really, really helpful. So let's set that, and you see after a short time of rendering, we have all these great previews here with the valid data, with empty data, and so on. So you get an idea about the data quality. In addition to that, let's enable our diagram view. The diagram view gives us a graphical overview about every modifications that we did with the data. The data flow, I think it's really, really useful. In my case, you see the screen place is a little bit limited, but it works for our demonstration. It's absolutely okay. So we have our two queries here with all the data and the histograms and so on. So we get more information here. And you can filter it. You have all the preview features that you know. What we do next is we will do a transformation. So we will group our data, and we will group it by count on the customer ID. So the new column name is count, and the operation is count rows. Once we hit OK, we will get a new column. You see it here in a minute, which gives us a count on the customers. So we know how many orders we have per customer, right? So it's well, you could do that in Excel too, but it's helpful here, for example, when you want to create a diagram where we can see the details. You see our customers and orders query here. Now we can go to our customers query and merge that query with the orders into a new table. So this is like a merge. We need to select the first and the second table and the fields. The fields should have identical names. In this case, this is the customer ID. We will do a left outer join, and the target is a new table. So we will get a third table now out of that, which runs out of the merge. So it's called merge in this case. We have the merge data. So we have all the customers and all the orders now in one combined table, which is really, really helpful and very easily done, as you all know, in Power Query. So let's jump to our next demonstration. Because in that demonstration we can get a little bit more into the details of our data operations, so we can select our columns and so on. But before we do that, let's go back to our drawing board and a little bit more into the question of staging, because we see staging then. When we go to our drawing board here, let's go here. We have the first line is the data source. So this is data source. From the data source we extract the data, and the target of the extraction is Power Query, which I think you would expect. And at Power Query we can apply transformation. We have all seen that. So this is our transformation. And then we can write to a staging lakehouse. So this is a staging lakehouse. So this is then written to our staging lakehouse in the format of Parquet. So this is Parquet. And the intermediate results are persisted to disk. Next, the Spark engine arrives, and the Spark engine reads our staged data essentially from that disk, and can do all the transformations and all that stuff in memory, right? Because it's Spark. And once we have defined a destination for our data, for example, a lakehouse or a warehouse, then it will use fast copy to move that data. And it's not only fast copy, it's also bulk insertion. So it's heavily optimized to our destination. So in the end, the data is in the target lakehouse, but in a very, very efficient way. So this is relevant for large data sets because without staging, large data sets stream through memory. With staging, you have intermediate results saved to Parquet. Spark can read in parallel, and fast copy does all your bulk inserts. So for large data sets, it's about 10 to 100 times faster to do it that way. So let's have a look how this looks in a practical way. So let's run our demonstration. So we are still in our query view. We have created the merge view, and now we can select our columns that we want to keep. In the customers and in the merge and the order table, we have different columns. So we want to keep customer ID, company name, and our orders, and remove all the other columns, which is quite handy to do in Power Query, as most of the stuff is very handy to do in Power Query. So this is our result. And now we can expand our orders because it's at the moment still a table format, and simply keep the count column. And you see in in the diagram, it's expanded now. So source removed other columns, expand all. It's very, very easy. And we have our count now in the merge table available, which is very, very handy. So let's jump to the next demonstration. So the next thing is that we add a new column, and this is a rank column because we want to get the rank of our orders. You see now Sevilla is on the first rank. It's very easy to insert that rank column. And we see the different ranks, and you see all the different applied steps. So let's rename our merge query to rank customers to make clear what's the idea. And what we can do next is to add a destination. So you see we have different options like Lakehouse, Warehouse, SQL Database, and so on. And we have already a predefined connection for a Lakehouse because we are already in an environment here. In a Fabric environment. So let's go. So what we will do next is we will disable the staging for the different tables. So I promised you that you can enable or disable staging. We will disable that, and then we will configure the target as a lakehouse for each and every table, and let's then run the Data Flow Gen2. So this, for large data sets, makes things slower, but we don't have a large data set in this case. So for us, we can expect that things will get slower with staging, because write things onto disk is slower than processing in memory, obviously. So there you see our lakehouse, and you see, by the way, the staging lakehouse for data flows. The staging lakehouse is auto-generated. Don't delete it, don't touch it. It's not yours, so to say. So we will now configure the destination for all the tables, and we have disabled staging, but as you can see, the creation of the staging lakehouse is done in the backend. It will be always done, so it's not a question whether it will be done or not. It's a question whether it will be used or not. You can define the different source types, the destinations, and so on. We can use automatic or we can use manual settings. Depends a little bit on your needs. For our first demonstration, automatic settings is absolutely fine. Let's hit next. We can then select our target lakehouse. We could select different targets. We will do that later, which is one of the benefits from the Data Flow Gen2. Yeah, so this is basically done. That looks great. Let's close the data flow, and it's now running. And you see we started at 9:02 in this case, we will measure it. It will take about 2 minutes to make it easy. And when we enable the staging, it will take a little bit longer, about 3 minutes, because we have not so much data in this case. So this is the expected and desired behavior. Yeah, so that's about the architecture and the demonstration. So let's jump back to our drawings. We get already through the different staging questions, and we will see that in a second. Let's go now onto, oh, no, that's not yet. So let's go now on the multi-destination pattern. So we have a Data Flow Gen2 that runs here, and we have, of course, source data. You could say, okay, this source data is copied in a raw format to a lakehouse. This is like bronzy. So next is we transform the data, and the cleaned data, then is written to a lakehouse. So this, we can simply write it here. This would be bronze. This would be silver. And you guess it, the next one is with aggregations. Aggregate. And then is written to, let's say, a warehouse. And this would equal gold, right? So this is like the destination, and you can have different destinations in the same data flow. It depends whether this makes sense to do everything in one data flow. I would be careful with that, but I think you get the idea how this is thought, right? Because we have multi destinations. One thing when you talk about loading data is always like, hey, how about the incremental refresh pattern? Incremental refresh. So for incremental refresh, you need first and foremost a modified column. You need one column with a date timestamp that you can use, right? So when you would draw that, then you would say, okay, we start today, and the first thing is that we load all data, right? From the source database, right? So we ask our source database, this is our source database, and we will get back all the data. Let's say this is 10 million rows, just as an assumption. And then we will insert all the 10 million rows in our target. So insert. So next day, right? So this is today, the first day. Let's say we have the second day here. So second day, what's happening on the second day, or today plus n, right? So we will load all data, but all data where date and time is bigger than last refresh. And for that you need the timestamp column. Let's say 50,000, 50k rows do come back, and then we will append all these 50k rows on our target, on our destination table. So this is how incremental refresh works, and I think it's pretty obvious that this makes a lot of sense, because otherwise you will need to wipe and reload everything. And last but not least, before we switch back to our demonstrations, we can integrate our Data Flow Gen2 into pipelines. So it's very simple. It's really very simple. You have a pipeline, and in that pipeline you create a new action, and the action calls a data flow. And before that you have, let's say, a different action that copies some data, copy data, data flow, and then you do some, I don't know, cleanup or monitoring or something like that. So the data flow is just a call in the pipeline to make it kind of real, so to say. So let's jump back to our demonstrations, and let's have a look how this is done in real life. Let's go a little bit back here. So let's go, there we go. So we stopped our pipeline, or the pipeline is done. You see it took about 2 minutes. I already mentioned that, right? So let's go to our Lakehouse and let's have a look at our data. And the first load takes a little bit, so this takes a little bit, but I just wanted to show you that the data is there. because I didn't want to cut it out because, well, you should see that it takes some time. I think that's fair enough. So it's currently loading the data, caching the data, and so on. And in a second, we will see the table view in the Lakehouse where we have pushed it with the data flow. There we go. So it's there. It's cool and it works, obviously. So let's go one step further and let's have a look on how this really behaves when we enable staging. We know that we expect that it takes a little bit longer. So let's go again in our Power Query. Let's enable staging. And yeah, I just accidentally hit the incremental refresh, which is not supported yet. We will do that also later. Now we can modify the destination and just write it in a different table. So we can compare that, or we can remove the destination and recreate it. Both ways would work. Depends on your preferred way how to do it. So we have already the credentials, and we can simply add a 2 at the end of the table because the customers table already exists, right? So basically that's it, and we will do that quickly now for all the tables. So we have now staging enabled, which means that the data is cached or written on a temporary lakehouse, and you see, let's do that quickly for all these tables. There we go. You see there's an error, so that's why we have to add a 2 there. There you go. Save settings, and we are good to go. So it's just for demonstration, and you will see it will take a little bit longer, but when you have larger data sets, it will be much faster then, obviously, because it's staged. So this is orders 2, and then we need rank 2, and that's it. There we go. Exactly. It's pretty straightforward. You have seen the staging is enabled by default. There is some intelligence behind, well, so that's it. That's cool. That works. Yeah, it's enabled now. So let's save and run. And once we did that, you will see it will take about 3 minutes or so to finish that completely. Well, so let's have a look how that integrates into a pipeline. Let's close our data flow. Let's create a new item, which is a pipeline, obviously. And you will see it's pretty straightforward. We have to name the pipeline. Once we have done that, we can simply create the pipeline, and we can then add a new action on the pipeline, an activity. There we go. And we can then select the data flow activity. You have to set the properties on that pipeline activity. So we can name it, and we can pick our data flow, save everything, and execute it. And it's that straightforward and very, very simple to do. So this is like the introduction into the data flows, and a little bit more than that, because I think it gets you a good idea on how things work, and what you should take care of, about the staging and so on. So let's have a look at community questions, common community questions regarding Dataflow Gen2. So first and foremost is when to use Dataflow Gen2 and when to use pipelines. So I'm confused, right? When to use Dataflow Gen2 versus a pipeline. This seems to overlap. What's the difference? So Dataflow Gen2 is transformation. It's ETL. Connect to source, transform the data, filter, join, pivot, clean, load to destination, and you have a visual interface. Data pipeline is about orchestration, schedule, dependencies, A must finish before B, add conditional logic, chain multiple activities together, all that stuff. Next very common question, my data flow is so slow, how to speed things up? My data flow takes, for example, 3 hours to refresh 10 million rows. This seems way too long. What can I do? First one, enable staging. Filter early. When you can filter your data, just do it. Remove unused columns. That always helps. And check the source query as the source efficient, or maybe the duration is caused by the source. Next question, can I output multiple tables out of one data flows? Yes, this is one of the best features of Gen2. You can right-click each query, add data destination as we did, and choose a destination like Lakehouse, Warehouse, KQL database, and so on. Right. Also, a very common question, which things should I learn? Dataflow Gen2 versus notebooks. I'm new to Fabric, right? So the answer from my point of view is start with Dataflow Gen2 because it's a familiar interface. You don't need code. All your common tasks are covered. It's SQL friendly. When you know what a join is, you will find the join in Power Query. So it's very, very handy. Well, some tips and tricks from the community. When you have shared transformations, so when multiple queries need the same base transformation, create one query and then you can reference it into others. So then the changes are propagated automatically. You have seen that all the steps that you do are documented. Pro tip is name them. Just doing a merge or something like that is not helpful when you reopen the data flow 12 months later, because you have no idea why this merge happens and what's the idea behind. And last but not least, start with small data first. You don't need to write all the time 100 million of rows and wait hours or minutes or something like that. Start small, but have the final data set a little bit in mind because of performance issues. So thank you for attending today. I really appreciate that. When you want to know which topic is up next, please click on subscribe on my YouTube channel, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks.